This is something that's haunted me since I was 6 years old, ever since my first encounter with it. I've had dreams about this thing, and two very specific run-ins with the creature that I'm sharing now, hoping I might find some help on what to do or how to get rid of it. This entity that's been hunting me for as long as I can remember. For some background, I'm a 21-year-old woman, and I still worry about this creature tracking me down. I'll explain why later, but for now, here's my story. I used to go camping every year with my grandparents, who I call Nana and Pop Pop, at the end of the school year. It was something I always looked forward to because I grew up loving the outdoors, especially the woods. I adored camping, the s'mores, the long hikes, sitting around the campfire, and of course, spotting wildlife. I was raised in California, mostly near the city, so the forest felt like my real home. I preferred trees and dirt over buildings and crowded streets any day. The woods were quieter, more peaceful, and I always felt safe there, like nothing could touch me. But something strange always seemed to happen around the end of May. Every year, during the last week of school, I'd have this recurring dream. I'd be walking alone down a dirt trail in the woods, and it was always eerily quiet. No birds, no rustling, nothing. I'd keep going until a red fox poked its head out from behind a tree. Its eyes were odd, almost human-like, but yellow, and they reminded me of a teddy bear's eyes. It would just stare at me, silent, not making a sound. In the dream, I'd usually walk up and pet it, and that's when it'd let out a soft growl. Then I'd keep walking, and it would follow me. The first time I had this dream, I was about 5, and it kept happening until I was maybe 11. It was always the same. I'd walk, find the fox, pet it, and hike on with it trailing beside me. But after the 4th time, it started walking behind me instead, and that's when I began to feel uneasy. I'd hear it making strange noises, but whenever I turned to look, it'd just be walking like everything was fine, even flashing what looked like a smile. I know it's a lot to say about one dream, but I think now it was a warning about the creature. Now, on to my first real encounter. I was 6 years old, and I was heading out on a camping trip with Nana and Pop Pop for about a week. I was thrilled, barely able to sit still in my kindergarten seat on the last day of school. They picked me up right when the bell rang, the camping trailer already hitched to Pop Pop's truck. I remember it was an old red pickup with just 3 seats, and I'd always sit in the middle. It took about 2 hours to get to the woods and another hour to reach our usual spot, deep in the forest, far from anyone else. Nana didn't like camping near other people, so we were isolated. While they set up the trailer, I wandered around the campsite, digging in the dirt for bugs, something I loved doing. I sat down and started poking around, but then I noticed how quiet the woods were. It was never quiet, not even at night, and though it struck me as odd, I was only 6, so I didn't dwell on it. As I kept digging, I thought I heard Nana call me. She always called me Little Sparrow, a nickname she'd given me since I was a baby. That's what I heard, Little Sparrow, but it sounded far off and kind of weak, like she was sick. I looked up toward the woods where it came from, but there was no way she was out there. She was still unloading stuff from the truck. Even at 6, it didn't feel right, so I shuffled closer to Nana and Pop Pop and stuck by them. I forgot about it soon enough as we started having fun. We played card games, ate dinner by the campfire, and gazed at the stars. I loved seeing the stars out there, couldn't see them where I lived. We got sleepy around 9 p.m., I think, and got ready for bed. The trailer had bunk beds. Nana and I slept on the bottom one, with our bags on the top, while Pop Pop took the couch because he snored like a bear. I always slept by the window so I could peek outside if I couldn't sleep. I dozed off fast that night, worn out from the last day of school. I woke up hours later, pitch black outside. It wasn't unusual for me to wake up at night. I've always had trouble sleeping, but this time, I rolled over to try to drift off again. Then I heard it, Little Sparrow. My eyes snapped open. It wasn't Nana or Pop Pop. They were both dead asleep and never talked in their sleep. A sick feeling twisted in my gut, like whatever said it wanted to hurt me bad. Even at 6, I knew this wasn't normal. Then came the tapping on the window, soft but clear. Tap, tap, tap. I froze, terrified, trying to tell myself it was just branches or rain. but I knew it wasn't. I decided to be brave and peek. Big fucking mistake. I pulled the curtain back just enough and saw these huge yellow eyes, glassy, unreal, like a giant teddy bear's, but cold and hostile. I freaked out, yanked the curtain shut, and dove under the blanket, the only thing I knew to do when I saw a monster. Tears streamed down my face. I'd never been so scared. I curled up against Nana and clung to her all night, the tapping getting louder and more insistent. I don't know how I fell asleep, but I did. Pop woke me up around noon, saying if I didn't get up soon, we'd miss fishing. I didn't want to leave the trailer, terrified whatever I'd seen was still out there. But I went outside eventually, constantly looking around, paranoid it'd grab me. Nana noticed I was scared and pulled me into a hug, asking what was wrong. I told her what I'd seen and heard, and to my surprise, she believed me. Next thing I knew, she was telling Pop we were moving campsites. It took some convincing, but he started packing up and hitched the trailer to the truck. They put me in the cab to rest, but I couldn't sleep. I felt watched, like every noise was that thing waiting to pounce. Nana stayed close, and then I heard it again, my real name this time, Aloan. My heart stopped. Nana whipped around toward the bushes where it came from, then grabbed me, pulling me into a tight hug in the truck. I sobbed, begging to go home. I was crying so hard I could barely breathe, and Pop finally agreed to cut the trip short. We started driving out, and I felt awful for ruining it, but I didn't know what that thing was. Something in my head told me to look back. I did, slowly, and an icy dread washed over me. There, in the middle of the campsite, sat a red fox with those same huge yellow eyes, the fox from my dreams, curling its lips into a creepy-ass smile. After that, we never went back to that spot. We kept camping, but only in busier areas. I didn't tell Nana what I saw, but she told me to trust my gut. She said I was sensitive to certain things, and that listening to my instincts would keep me safe. That could have been the end, but it wasn't. My second encounter was way worse, when I was 17. By then, I knew what a skinwalker was, and I was paranoid every time I went near woods, always worrying I'd see that fox again. I didn't think about it too much, though. Me and my younger siblings, Cashin and Leora, were staying at our great-aunt and uncle's place for Christmas. They lived high up in the mountains, no cell service unless you were on their Wi-Fi. I didn't mind the house. I still loved the woods despite everything. But at night, I hated how they left the curtains open, letting anything outside see in. Still, I felt safe inside, knowing they'd protect us kids. It didn't snow there, so we could play outside. They had a gorgeous black lab, about a year old, named Juniper. She was playful, didn't listen to anyone but my uncle, and got excited easily. A good pup. One day, Leora and our aunt went shopping for a girl's day. I'm a girl too, but I wanted to hike with my uncle, Cashin, and Juniper instead. We left early for a 4-hour walk into town. It was chilly, but the exercise made it feel nice. About an hour in, I slowed down to soak in the forest. It was so peaceful, I could have stayed forever. But then I felt something off. The woods went dead quiet, just our footsteps and Cashin chatting with our uncle. Juniper sensed it too, ears up, growling low. I sped up to stay near Cashin, worried about a coyote or mountain lion, though I knew they wouldn't be out then or near roads. Cashin was only 9, and as the oldest, I had to protect him. That same icy fear from when I was 6 hit me. I tried not to think of the creature, but it was all I could focus on. I stopped to tie my shoe, hurrying to get out of there, and then I heard it, Aloan. My heart sank. I was shaking, eyes wide. It was right beside me, clear as day. I turned my head slowly, and there it was, that red fox, those awful yellow eyes, that sick smile. This time, I saw it better. Matted fur, reeking of rot and garbage, limbs too long, back legs bent wrong. Those eyes were emptier than before. I wanted to scream, run, cry, but I was fucking paralyzed. Then it spoke again, mimicking Cashin's voice. Found you. Before anything else happened, Juniper lunged in front of me, barking like crazy, snapping and growling so fiercely it snapped me out of my trance. I looked again, and it was gone. I bolted to Cashin and my uncle, who hadn't seen it. They were too far ahead. My uncle started praying and singing softly, keeping us close. I kept my eyes down, refusing to stop walking. Juniper stopped barking but stayed by me, growling. When we got to town, my uncle called our aunt to pick us up, saying it wasn't safe to walk back. She did, confused since we'd planned that hike for days. In the car, Juniper stuck to me. She knew that thing was after me and had saved me. I was so damn grateful she was there. Who knows what would have happened without her? Back at the house, I told my uncle and aunt everything. They prayed, locked everything tight, and my aunt put something, maybe ashes, around the doors, though I never confirmed it. It cut our Christmas trip short. They worried I wasn't safe in the woods. We left the next day, making up some excuse about a friend's emergency. I felt like shit for ruining it, but leaving the woods made me feel safe again. Before we left, they told me it wasn't my fault and that I was lucky it didn't hurt me or the others. It helped a bit, but left me with questions. Is it still out there? Why me? What does it want, my skin, my soul? Will it torment me forever? I still don't have answers, and that's what scares me most, that I've since moved from California to Kentucky, living in the woods again. Stupid, I know, but life didn't give me options, and my grandpa here let me stay with him. So don't call me a fucking idiot. I had no choice. It hasn't found me yet, and I'm glad, but I'm still scared. Can it track me down? Is it still hunting me? I don't know anyone nearby who knows how to deal with this, so I'm sharing my story hoping someone out there can help. If you know anything, please, fucking help me. First off, let me set the scene because context matters, right? So, I live out in the middle of nowhere, like legit rural Utah. My house is surrounded by miles of desert scrubland, mesas, and nothingness. It's quiet as hell most days, which is great if you like peace and solitude. But trust me, when things go wrong out here, they really go wrong. No neighbors, no cell service, no help for miles. Just you and whatever the fuck else might be lurking around. Anyway, last night started normal enough. Well, as normal as things can get when you're stuck babysitting your cousin's dog while he's off doing God knows what. His dog, Max, is one of those big golden retrievers that slobbers everywhere and has the IQ of a bag of rocks, but he's good company. Or at least, he was until last night. I had been working from home all day, boring office job stuff, and decided to take Max out for a walk after dinner. The sun was setting, painting everything orange and pink, and the air smelled like dry sagebrush and dust. Beautiful, honestly. You ever notice how deserts feel alive at sunset? Everything gets sharp-edged and electric, like the whole world's holding its breath. Max seemed restless too. He kept sniffing the ground more than usual and tugging at his leash like he wanted to run ahead. Dogs are weirdly intuitive about shit like that, you know? Like they know something's up before we do. At first, I figured he just smelled a rabbit or maybe a snake. Whatever. I wasn't paying much attention. We walked along this dirt path that cuts through the scrubland behind my property. It's not really a trail, just a worn-down strip of dirt where ATVs sometimes pass through. There's nothing special about it during the day, just rocks, cacti, and the occasional tumbleweed rolling past like something out of an old Western movie. But at night, man, it feels different. Darker, quieter, like the shadows stretch farther than they should. That's when I noticed the smell. It hit me suddenly, like walking into a room full of wet fur and rotting meat. Gross, right? I stopped dead in my tracks and looked around, trying to figure out where it was coming from. Max froze too, his ears perked up and his tail tucked between his legs. He whimpered softly, which is weird for him. He's usually fearless. "Hey, buddy," I said, crouching down to scratch behind his ears. "What's got you spooked?" He didn't respond, just stared off into the distance with those big, sad puppy dog eyes. I followed his gaze but couldn't see anything unusual. Just the same old scrubland stretching out under the fading light. Still, the smell lingered, thick and heavy in the air. It made my stomach churn. I figured it was probably roadkill or something, a dead coyote or jackrabbit left baking in the sun all day. Happens all the time out here. So I shrugged it off and kept walking, dragging Max along with me. He resisted at first, pulling back against the leash, but eventually gave in and followed me reluctantly. And then I heard it. At first, it sounded like footsteps crunching over gravel. Not super loud, just faint enough to make me glance over my shoulder. Nothing there, of course. Just the empty path behind us. I told myself it was probably just my imagination playing tricks on me. Desert winds can sound like footsteps sometimes, especially when you're already creeped out. But then it happened again. Closer this time. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Each step deliberate, almost rhythmic. And now I could hear breathing too, low, raspy breaths that didn't match the pace of mine or Max's panting. My heart started pounding in my chest, and I tightened my grip on the leash without even realizing it. Okay, I muttered to myself, trying to stay calm. Probably just a deer or something. Except deers don't wear shoes. And they sure as hell don't breathe like that. The footsteps stopped abruptly, and for a second, everything went completely silent. Even Max stopped moving, his body rigid and tense beside me. The only sound was the wind whistling through the sagebrush, carrying with it that god-awful stench of decay. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement. It was fast, so fast I almost missed it. A shadow darting across the edge of my vision, slipping between the rocks and cacti like liquid darkness. I spun around, heart hammering in my chest, but whatever it was had already disappeared. All I could see was the empty landscape bathed in twilight. "Fuck this," I whispered, backing away slowly. "Let's go, Max." Max barked sharply, jerking against the leash and nearly knocking me off balance. He was staring straight ahead now, hackles raised and growling low in his throat. I turned to look where he was focused, squinting into the growing darkness. That's when I saw it. Standing about 20 feet away, silhouetted against the horizon, was a figure. Tall and thin, with long limbs that seemed too angular to belong to any human being. Its head was tilted at an unnatural angle, like it was studying me or sizing me up. The worst part? It wasn't standing still. It was shifting, changing. One second it looked humanoid, the next it seemed to melt into something else entirely, its shape rippling like water caught in a breeze. I couldn't move. Literally couldn't. My legs felt like they were rooted to the spot, and my lungs refused to draw breath. Max was going ballistic beside me, barking and snarling like he was ready to attack, but I barely registered it. All I could focus on was that thing. And then it spoke. Not with words, exactly. More like a guttural growl that vibrated in my skull, bypassing my ears altogether. It said something. I'm pretty sure it was English, but the words came out all wrong, twisted and broken, like hearing them through static. Whatever it said, it made my skin crawl. My brain screamed at me to run, but my body wouldn't listen. Instead, I stood there frozen as the creature took a step forward. Then another. With each step, its form shifted again, becoming less human and more wrong. Its arms elongated, fingers stretching into claw-like talons. Its face, if you could call it that, split open into a wide, toothy grin that stretched far beyond what should have been possible. Finally, Max snapped me out of it. He lunged forward, pulling me along with him as he bolted down the path toward home. I stumbled after him, adrenaline kicking in just enough to get my legs moving. Behind us, I could hear the thing laughing, a deep, guttural sound that echoed through the desert like thunder. We didn't stop running until we reached the front door of my house. I fumbled with the keys, hands shaking so badly I could barely fit them into the lock. Once inside, I slammed the door shut and locked it, then collapsed onto the floor, gasping for air. Max was pacing back and forth, still growling softly, his eyes glued to the window. I crawled over to him and wrapped my arms around his neck, trying to calm both of us down. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows and making the whole house creak ominously. For a while, nothing happened. Just silence. But then, somewhere in the distance, I heard it again. That same low, guttural laugh. Closer this time. I haven't slept since. Every time I close my eyes, I see the thing's face, The way it grinned at me like it knew something I didn't. Like it was enjoying itself. I called my cousin earlier today to ask if he'd ever heard stories about whatever that was. Turns out, yeah, he has. He told me about these legends his grandma used to tell him when he was a kid, stories about skinwalkers. Shape-shifting witches that can turn into animals or mimic people. They hunt alone, targeting anyone who wanders too far from safety. Apparently, they're drawn to fear. Great. Just fucking great. So now I'm sitting here, typing this post with a shotgun across my lap and every light in the house turned on. I don't know if it's still out there, watching me, waiting for me to slip up. But I do know one thing. I'm never going outside alone again. If anyone reads this and knows what the hell I'm supposed to do next, please let me know. Because I'm seriously freaking out. Back in college, a buddy of mine named Torin and I were hanging out in our dorm room, smoking some weed and just chilling. We got to talking about creepy shit, urban legends, ghost stories, that kind of thing, and I mentioned I'd heard some seriously fucked up skinwalker tales. Torin got real quiet all of a sudden, like the air had been sucked out of the room, and then he said, "I saw one once. Up close and personal. That shit's real, bro." Naturally, I pressed him to spill the details. He didn't want to talk about it at first, said it freaked him out too much, but eventually he caved and told me the story. This all went down the summer before he left for college. Torin and his high school crew had planned one last big hurrah, a camping trip to send off their old life. He grew up in Scottsdale, Arizona, and they drove about an hour and a half out of the city to a ranch owned by one of their friends' parents. There were 8 of them total. Torin, this guy we'll call Soren, and 6 others. They all rolled up around the same time in 3 separate cars, just as it was getting dark. They set up their tents, built a campfire, and started drinking and smoking, kicking back like you do. But Soren was off that night, quieter than usual. Torin asked him what was up, and Soren just shrugged and said, "I don't feel good. Just a little under the weather, you know." They didn't push it. The group kept going, making beers and having a good time. Then, out of nowhere, everyone realized Soren was gone. Just fucking vanished. Nobody saw him leave, even though they were all pretty close to the fire. They started calling his name, thinking he was pulling some dumb prank, but after a while, they got worried. He'd been missing for over an hour. Torin and a couple others grabbed flashlights and headed out into the hills to look for him. They wandered around for a good 15 minutes, shouting Soren, Soren, with no answer. Then they finally heard something. Not Soren, though. It was a coyote howl, sharp and familiar, answered by a few more off in the distance. Torin said he started feeling uneasy at that point, wondering if maybe Soren had gotten dragged off by some wild animal. Everyone was on edge because there's no damn way he could have disappeared like that without anyone noticing. Just no fucking way. Then they heard another howl. This one was different, longer, weirder, like it didn't quite fit. Torin said it sounded like someone had a shitty recording of a coyote howl and decided to fuck with it. His blood ran cold when the howl trailed off into this hacking, guttural laughter. And unlike the others, that laughter sounded close, like 20 feet away close. The group started spinning around, shining their lights everywhere, half convinced Soren was out there screwing with them. But he wasn't. They didn't see a damn thing. No one, nothing. Shaken up, they hauled ass back to the campfire. By then, everyone was freaking out, talking about calling the cops, when headlights cut through the dark. A truck pulled up to the campsite, Soren's truck. He stepped out, looking confused as hell, asking why everyone was losing their shit. He apologized, said he'd gotten off work 2 hours late and raced out to the ranch as fast as he could. That's when it clicked for them. Soren hadn't carpooled with anyone. He'd driven himself. And right on fucking cue, they heard it again. That long, drawn-out howl, just like the weird one before. That was it. They noped the fuck out of there, packed up, and paid to crash at a designated campground instead. The rest of the night went fine, but Torin still swears he thinks about that moment when he asked Soren if he was okay. He said he could tell something was off about him then. but didn't make much of it at the time. Now though, he's 100% convinced Soren was some kind of skinwalker entity, impersonating his friend just to fuck with them. How the hell it knew what Soren looked like, what he sounded like? Torrens got no clue. Maybe it got inside their heads or some shit. He doesn't have an explanation, and that's what keeps him up at night. Last night, my wife, Lasara, swears she heard a fucking skinwalker in our house. Let me start by saying Lasara doesn't buy into paranormal bullshit. Ghosts, monsters, none of that crap. We've got 3 cats, and one of them, this little asshole named Vesper, loves to act out. He's always jumping on counters, meowing his head off at all hours, begging for attention. It's a regular thing, especially at night. Last night, after a few beers and some video games, I crashed around midnight and crawled into bed with Lasara. When I woke up this morning, she was practically glued to me, eyes wide, looking like she'd seen a ghost. I asked her what the hell was wrong, and she laid it all out. She said around 2:50 a.m., she woke up to what sounded like one of the cats downstairs, meowing louder than usual. She shook off the sleep, focusing, and realized it didn't sound right, like a person trying to mimic a cat. And then it started saying hello after each meow. This went on for 2 or 3 minutes, she said, until a loud bang hit our front door. Right after, her phone pinged with a motion sensor alert from the porch. I checked my phone, and sure as shit, there it was, motion detected, 2:52 a.m. I asked why she didn't wake me up so I could grab the gun. She said she was frozen stiff, scared to make a sound in case whatever it was heard her. We're out running errands now while I type this, but something about her story's fucking with me. Last night, I set the home security alarm at 9 p.m., and we didn't turn it off until we took the dog out this morning. To make it worse, all 3 cats slept in the room with us, door shut tight. So whatever was in the house or outside that door wasn't one of our animals. First thing that popped into my head was a skinwalker, but maybe I'm just paranoid as hell. I checked every room after I got up, not sure what I'd even do if I found something. It's weird that Lasara, who doesn't believe in this shit, was so rattled. We bought this house brand new. No one's lived here before us. When I'm home alone, I get this creepy feeling like someone's watching me right over my damn shoulder. Lasara's mentioned the place giving her chills since we moved in, like something's off, but she never made a big deal of it until now. We just got back, and I went to hang a shirt in the master bedroom closet. That's when I noticed the attic access board was shifted a little. I asked Lasara if she'd been up there. She said no, and the builders would have set it right before we moved in. Now I'm fucking anxious just thinking about it. What the hell's going on? Has anyone dealt with shit like this before? We're heading to my mother-in-law's place to grab some sage. Lasara says burning it might keep whatever's lurking around away. I don't know what to believe, but I'm not taking any chances. My grandfather, Orwin, told me this story once while we were sitting around a campfire in his backyard under the cool Arizona desert night. The horizon stretched out clear, stars twinkling in a deep purple sky, with a big, fat moon hanging low over the mountains. His voice was rough and gravelly, worn from a lifetime of cigars and whiskey. The firelight danced across his wide, dark eyes as he settled into his chair, ready to dive into the tale. Way back when I was a boy, about your age, he started, I lived just outside an Apache reservation with your great-grandfather, Idris. He'd come back from the war and set up a ranch, 100 acres for raising horses and cattle, tucked between a scraggly mountainside where the dirt only grew thorn bushes and not much else. One night, my mother was sick, so Idris and I took a trip into town, about 50 miles away. We cut straight through the dry desert, over a washed-out creek, past some old abandoned farmsteads. The fire popped, a log cracking loud enough to snap me out of the story. What happened next? I asked, leaning in. Settle down, kid, you'll hear it soon enough, he rasped. Idris and I were driving in an old Ford pickup, he went on. It was dark out, inky, thick dark, with just the truck's lights cutting through it. I remember the engine started sputtering and the damn thing jerked to a stop. God damn it, Idris muttered, coasting it to the side of the road. Stay here, son, he said, stepping out and slamming the door with a heavy thud. My window was down, and the cold desert air felt good on my sweaty face and neck. Idris was grabbing water from the back to cool the engine when I caught a whiff of something rotten eggs. Weird as hell to smell sulfur out there. Then came this stench like carrion, like one of those bloated cattle that had dropped dead in the heat and fester till the crows tore it open. It fucking stank, and I gagged. My skin started tingling, he continued. The back of my neck itched, my face got hot. The wind died, and the air hung heavy with that stink filling the cab. Idris, I called. Idris. No answer. My heart started pounding, and I felt this fear deep in my bones, in my chest. Boy, I tell you, I never felt fear like that. Not till Vietnam. Not till I saw men dying around me. I locked my door, reached over to lock Idris's, and then I saw it. A shadow darted across the road, caught in the dim beams of the headlights under the half-open hood. Orwin paused, spitting a thick wad of tobacco into the dirt, staring off into the dark. I realized I'd been holding my breath and sucked in air. The night was cool, but I was sweating like hell. Well, what happened? What about Idris? What did you see? I pressed. He sighed. A creature, he said, shaking his head. You gotta understand, there were legends, old ones, older than the rock formations in that valley, older than Crazy Horse, Sitting Bull, and all those ancient chiefs and shamans. The Apache, the Hopi, the Cherokee, all the first peoples, they told stories about dark magic, deals with old spirits, blood sacrifices for power. Enough power to fight each other, the Spaniards, and later the white men who came for their land and women. They called him. He leaned forward, the firelight flickering across his face, the desert night stretching out around us, the creek, the moon, the mountains. They called him skinwalkers, shape-changers. Old warriors brought back as skinless men, all sinew and muscle, walking on deer legs with a man's torso and a coyote's head, but fucked up, boy. Long, twisted snouts, teeth like a Bowie knife, arms dangling low. Standing 8 feet tall, even hunched over. They'd get cowboys and riders, shrug off bullets and sabers, tear through Spanish armor like it was nothing. That's what I saw, he said. Big and fast, just for a second. It bolted across the road, gray and mottled, muscles flexing under those legs. Hooves clomped on the ground, shoulders hunched and stringy. It turned, looked right into the cab, right into my fucking eyes, and I swear, boy, it grinned at me. I sank into the seat, shaking, scared shitless. I knew death was close. The air buzzed like right before lightning splits a tree, charged, heavy with power. I yelled for Idris, but my voice came out a dry squeak. I was trembling bad. Orwin's words hit me hard. He was still here, so I knew he'd made it, but the way he talked about skinwalkers, their trickery, their voices, their stolen skins, fuck, it got under my skin. I felt the weight of it, even then. Their real power was deception, he said. Sure, they could mimic voices, but they could take skins too. That's why the gods stripped their hides, so they could borrow others. Not for long, though. Legend says maybe an hour before the soul of that skin came hunting for its body, heading to whatever hell waited. Getting skinned alive was hell enough, I reckon. A minute passed, felt like a goddamn lifetime. 1 second stretched into 1,000 years. Then Idris's door opened. I jerked my head left, fists up to fight off whatever was coming. Son, it's me, Idris said, climbing in. He grabbed the wheel, pulled himself up awkward-like, and settled into the seat. I shrank into the corner, staring at him hard. Your great-grandfather was a good man, treated me and my ma right. Fought in the war, saw the worst of humanity in Poland, freeing those camps. I sized him up. Is this him? Do I run? Do I die? Let's go get that medicine for your ma, he said, shifting the truck into gear and pulling back onto the road. Guess it was him after all. But how'd I know? Not 'cause he mentioned ma. No. I knew 'cause out the corner of my eye, through the window, I saw that fucking beast running 50 miles an hour alongside us, staring at me with those yellow eyes and that grinning mouth. I locked eyes with it, hunched, pissed off, keeping pace. Idris kept his gaze dead ahead. Son, he said, don't look at it. Don't look at it. That's how I knew, boy. I'm a Marine stationed at Camp Pendleton, and my name's Gavin. Getting assigned here was a dream come true. It's in Oceanside, northern San Diego, one of the biggest Marine Corps bases in the U.S. There's tons to do around here. Hit the beach to surf, swim, or grab drinks at the pier. The locals are chill, with this laid-back surfer vibe that I settled into fast. Everything was going great those first few weeks, but despite the easygoing feel of the area, work was a different story, rigid, no bullshit. My commanding officer, a gruff hard-ass named Torvald, made it clear this wasn't gonna be a fucking walk in the park. Then one cool night, I woke up totally fucked up, disoriented and nowhere near my bed. Looking around, I saw nothing but flat dirt fields stretching out, hills in the distance, and a black sky full of stars with a fat moon overhead. Not another soul for miles. I figured I must have been sleepwalking, marching in my dreams, reliving basic training, and somehow ended up out here. I scanned every direction and finally spotted lights way off behind me. At least I knew which way to head. I turned and started trudging back toward the base, legs shaky from walking so damn far in my sleep. It felt surreal, and I couldn't wrap my head around how I'd gotten out there. I'd sleepwalked a couple times before, but never this far. Part of me started freaking out, wondering how often this shit happened without me even knowing. I'd been walking a few minutes, alone, when I got this weird feeling, like a tingle on the back of my neck. After a bit, I started thinking someone was tailing me, that old caveman instinct kicking in, telling me I was being hunted in the dark. Right as I thought that, someone cleared their throat behind me. A chill shot up my spine, goosebumps prickling my skin. This deep, gruff voice spoke up. "What are you doing out here, so late at night?" He stepped closer, and in the moonlight, I could see him better. My throat locked up when I saw his eyes, yellow, like a cat's or a wolf's, maybe a fucking snake's. "Haven't you been told to stay in your bunk at this hour?" His tone was creepy as hell, predatory, but he acted friendly enough. My brain screamed to run, but this other voice in my head hushed it, saying everything was fine, no need to panic. "Look at his uniform," it said. Sure enough, he was decked out in a Marine Corps uniform, insignia marking him as an officer. "You wouldn't disrespect a superior, would you?" "Sorry, sir," I stammered. "Must have been sleepwalking. I'm heading back to base. I can make it from here." He grinned, showing teeth, and said, "I'll walk with you a bit. We must be distant kin, both out here wandering at night. I blame mine on sleepwalking too, but I'm just a run-of-the-mill insomniac. Once I'm up, I can't get back to sleep, so I hike. Reminds me of the old days, deployed, marching before dawn till way past noon." The longer we talked, the dumber I felt for almost bolting. He seemed normal. We got to chatting, built a rapport, and I told him about my life, my background, where I came from. Then I glanced at his face again and nearly shit myself. Maybe there was some family tie. As we got closer to the base lights, I saw he looked like me, strikingly so. He didn't look like that at first. That suspicious voice piped up. His eyes were yellow, remember? Now they're brown. But the louder voice drowned it out, saying it was just the dark playing tricks, that I hadn't seen him clear till now. "Tell me about your parents," he said. "What are they like?" I started talking, feeling almost hypnotized, staring into his swirling brown eyes. He slowed his pace, and I matched it. The base was close, lights bright, maybe a couple 100 yards off, but they started dimming. Were we walking backward? Was I even walking, or was something dragging me? It took a second to snap out of that weird daze. I realized I'd been in a trance. When I looked at him again, half-lidded, I was fucking stunned. He wasn't just similar, he could have been my twin. Same brown eyes, cropped chestnut hair, sharp jaw, angular nose. But his smile, those teeth, weren't mine. Pointed, long, made for tearing flesh to shreds. "Who are you?" I croaked. In a blink, he changed. Not some slow-ass werewolf movie shit, this was instant. 1 second he was me, the next, he was this fucking nightmare. Tall, long-limbed, pale gray skin, pitch black eyes. Its jaw unhinged, showing teeth sharper than a wolf's or bear's, like that freaky white masked thing from Spirited Away, all hate and hunger. It didn't even look solid, more like living shadows. A gunshot cracked, jolting me awake. It had my shoulder in its jaws, grinding down to the bone. Another shot, yelling, footsteps running up. The thing tried to lift me in its mouth, and it was so damn big it almost did. I thrashed, punched its face, kicked its eyes. My shoulder burned. My arm felt like it'd rip off any second. Another shot rang out. I slammed one more kick into its face, and the wounded fucker dropped me, moaning low. It melted into a black puddle, like oil, then slithered off into the night like a goddamn centipede, blending into the shadows. "You okay?" one of the Marines asked, pulling me up. Never thought I'd see someone survive a mountain lion. "You're lucky as hell." I was still processing when another piped up. "Man, are you blind?" That wasn't a mountain lion. I exhaled, relieved someone else saw it. It was a wolf, a big gray wolf. Never seen one that huge. "You're damn lucky." They offered an ambulance. I shook my head. "I can walk." I eyed them warily, half expecting them to shift too, but they seemed real. They walked me back, and I debated telling them what I'd actually seen. With every step, it felt more like a fuck-up dream. Maybe it was a mountain lion or a wolf, starved and desperate. But the bite marks? When I hit the infirmary, they said they'd never seen anything like M. Blood tests, antibiotics, nothing explained it. Sleepwalking got worse after that. I'd wake up in the night, bolting from the hospital bed, and it'd take a squad to drag me back. I'd scream about needing to march in the dirt fields. Black veins started creeping from the bites, spreading like a plague. They couldn't fix it. They discharged me eventually, left me to deal with it alone. Think they're scared of what I might do near the base. Most nights, I wake up miles from home. No clue how I got there, like that night in the field. But this isn't sleepwalking. It's worse. The veins are climbing my neck, my face. People stare, thinking they're weird tattoos. They ask if I'm okay as I sweat and twitch, paranoid as fuck. The blackouts are longer, closer together. I don't know how much time I've got till those veins hit my heart, my brain. I'm terrified of what happens then, when I'm out in those fields, hunting for a meal. I think I ran into a fucking skinwalker. I've got no proof, but I swear this shit's real. Sorry for the wall of text. I've always been a skeptic, ever since I was a kid. Scary stories never fazed me. Horror games didn't make me flinch, and if I heard a weird noise at night, I'd chalk it up to an animal or the house settling. But something fuck up happened the other day, and I'm not sure what to make of it. It's the first time in years I've been genuinely scared shitless. Thought I live with my girlfriend, Isolde, in a big cabin in a forested area somewhere in the US. There are roads nearby, but our closest neighbors are at least a kilometer off. We've got 2 cats. One, a little bastard named Roan, sleeps in the bedroom with us. The other, Sable, roams outside at night doing whatever the hell cats do. I'm a night owl, stay up late, sleeping, while Isolde's the early bird type. This happened around 1 a.m. I was in the living room, half asleep, watching shitty TV while Isolde was knocked out in the bedroom. I heard something outside near the cat flap. For context, our flap's got an electronic chip, so only Rune and Sable can use it. I figured it was Sable coming or going and ignored it. Then it happened again, something thudding against the flap, over and over, random as hell. I got fed up, decided to open the door, thinking the damn cat couldn't figure it out. I passed the bedroom on my way, peeked in to see if Isolde heard it. She was out cold. But Rune was wide awake, staring at the window. I called his name. He didn't budge, just kept staring. I shrugged it off and headed to the kitchen where the back door is. Through the flap's translucent plastic, I saw a dark shape. I sighed, expecting Sable, and swung the door open. Rune tensed up as I did. The door flew wide, and I froze. Whatever it was started moving before I got it open, bolted fast as fuck. I only caught a glimpse, a distorted figure, like a tailless dog, sprinting into the dark. I freaked the hell out and slammed the door shut. What the fuck was that? My skeptic brain kicked in. Maybe it was Sable, and I just startled her. The dark could have made her look bigger, right? Still, I was creeped out and decided to call it a night. Slipping into bed, I realized something fucked. Sable was already there, asleep on the rug. It took me forever to doze off. A few hours later, I jolted awake with this gut-wrenching dread. Something was off. Isolde was still out beside me. I held my breath and heard it creaking by the door, too loud for a cat, like a person stalking around. I fumbled for the bedside lamp and flicked it on. Light flooded the room, and there it was, just outside the open door, staring at me, that same twisted figure from earlier. It wasn't tall, maybe a little over 5 feet, but its face fucked me up. I only saw it for a second, but I'll never forget it, like a dog with a stretched out snout and human-like eyes, snarling like a pissed-off hound. I started yelling, "Get the fuck out," scrambling back, trying to sit up. It spun and bolted down the hall. I heard it dash outside, past the window above our headboard. Isolde woke up, panicking, and we both caught a glimpse of the damn thing tearing off into the woods. I grabbed my shotgun from under the bed, trusty as hell, snagged a couple rounds from the ammo box next to it, and ran out in my underwear. I rounded into the kitchen. The back door was wide open. I'd forgotten to lock it after that first sighting. I haven't seen the fucker since, and we're still in the cabin, but I've put heavy-duty locks on every door and window. I check every exit point at night now and go to bed earlier, asleep before the freaky shit wakes up. I've scoured forums, and the closest match to what I saw is a skinwalker. If you know anything about these bastards, please tell me. Isolde and I are on edge, and I need answers. I live right next to a Navajo reservation, and I've made friends with a bunch of folks my age there. We hang out, play video games, and just act like regular teens. My best friend, Caliph, lives less than a mile from me, so I walk over a lot. It's an easy trek, takes about 25 to 30 minutes, and I've done it dozens of times. I know the people along the way, so I'm never scared or on edge. There's this patch of forest halfway there, though, that sometimes gives me the creeps, like I'm being watched. It happens often enough that I try to brush it off as my mind fucking with me. This one day, I stayed at Caliph's longer than I meant to. By the time I left, it was getting dark. I hit that stretch of forest just as the sun dipped below the horizon. I shivered a bit, steeling myself to push through. 10 steps in, I heard a branch snap. You know, that loud-ass crack that screams something's there with you. I froze, not sure what the hell to do. Run? Turn back to Caliph's? I didn't know what was smart. "Hello?" I whispered, my voice cracking as it slipped out. No clue why I even said it, but I did, and I listened hard for a reply. My stomach dropped when it came back, my own voice echoing, "Hello." I started breathing too fast, heart slamming against my ribs, feeling like I might pass out. "Hello," it said again, not from me. I wanted to bolt, but my feet felt glued to the dirt. I couldn't scream, couldn't answer, as my voice kept bouncing around me. Hello, hello, hello. It was everywhere, impossible to pinpoint. "Stop it," I finally forced out. Everything went dead silent for a long minute. Nothing moved. The air turned stale, and I realized there were no normal forest sounds, no bugs, no frogs, no crickets, just nothing. I stood there, scared shitless, waiting to see what had happened next. "Stop it," it mimicked back. That was it. I'd had enough. I willed my heavy legs to move, but before I could take a step, bushes rustled 20 feet to my left. I watched, horrified, as a deer head with massive antlers poked through. Then it stepped out and stood up on 2 legs. I fucking booked it, flew out of those woods and all the way home in record time. I didn't say a word to my mom when I got there. Just went straight to my room, laid down, and replayed it in my head. She came in later, asked if I was okay. I said yeah, just tired. I don't know why I didn't tell her. Maybe I was scared she'd think I was nuts. I called Caliph and spilled everything. He freaked out and told me not to answer it or look out my window that night, no matter what. That scared me even more. He said to call him in the morning. He'd explain after talking to his grandfather. I didn't sleep a wink, just lay there listening to every damn sound. Around 3 a.m., right as I started drifting off, the air shifted. The night went quiet, no more normal noises. My heart started pounding again. I pulled the covers over my head like a kid, too fucking terrified to move. Then it came, after a long pause. "Hello." I cried, it was all I could do. Hello. Stop it, it mocked, repeating what I'd said in the woods. That was bad enough, but then it got worse. It started calling my name in my mom's voice. Ismara. Ismara, come here. Hello. Stop it. My own voice mixed in again. All night, that thing outside my window kept at it. My mom's voice calling me, my words thrown back at me. When the sun finally broke through, it stopped. I crashed into a shaky sleep. I woke around noon to Caliph calling. He talked to his grandfather and had answers. He said it was a creature they call Lushii, he who goes on all fours, a skinwalker. An evil witch using dark magic to turn into an animal with whatever traits it needs. It had caught my scent, knew me now. He warned me that since it had me marked, it'd always follow me. I'd have to stay on guard. Last night, I heard scratching at my window, then a low hum. It started saying my name again, tossing and shit I never said, all in my mom's voice. At one point, it dragged my name out long and slow, Ismaria. It tried luring me outside, begging me to open the door and let it in. That went on all fucking night. I feel like I'm losing my mind. What the hell do I do? Is this thing seriously gonna stalk me from the shadows for the rest of my life? I don't think I can handle that. I don't like calling the fucked up things roaming the Appalachian Mountains skinwalkers. That word only means something to people who've seen them, and I sure as hell didn't believe in that shit until about 2 weeks ago. My name's Theron, and I'd always wanted to visit the Appalachians. The pics on Google hooked me. The place is gorgeous. I'd heard some wild stories about skinwalkers prowling around at night, which just made it more intriguing. So I saved up, rented a cabin, and flew out to live that mountain life for a couple weeks. The first few days were chill. I got settled in, hiked some trails nearby, and didn't have much to report, just soaking it in. That was the first 3 or 4 days. Shit hit the fan on the 5th night. The cabin I'd rented had 2 big floodlights out back. Every night, a coyote would wander by, tripping the lights. I thought it was kind of cute, didn't give it a second thought. But that 5th night, I was in the living room, watching some grainy satellite TV, when I caught the floodlights flicking on out of the corner of my eye. I hopped up to peek out the window, excited to see my little coyote buddy again. Yeah, fuck that. What I saw wasn't a coyote. Its body looked mostly normal, except for the legs. Those fuckers were long and skinny, 3 times longer than any coyotes ought to be. It just stood there, staring at me with these empty-ass eyes. My fight or flight should have kicked in, but I was stuck, staring back like an idiot. Then it let out this scream, loudest, most blood-curdling shit I've ever heard, and stepped closer to the window. I spun around to grab my phone off the couch, thinking I'd call the cops. As I moved, the floodlights cut out. The only light left was the faint glow from the old TV. I snatched my phone and bolted upstairs to my room. First instinct screaming to hide in the closet. So I did. The closet doors had these little slits, so I could kinda see out. I fumbled with my phone to dial the police. Dead battery. Fucking perfect. Then I heard knocking at the front door. It kept going, steady, for what felt like a goddamn hour. I had no clue what to do, so I just sat there, hoping it'd stop. It did, eventually, but then I heard the door creak open. No smashing, no kicking, just opened. I started crying, quiet as I could. Footsteps echoed, soft at first, then louder, faster, coming up the stairs. It got to my room, and I thought I was fucking done for. I could hear it messing around, drawers sliding open, bed sheets rustling. I peeked through a slit, couldn't see shit, until that rotting, disgusting face pressed right up against the door. Its breathing was so loud it hurt my ears. I shoved myself back into the corner, grabbed a jacket, and threw it over me. Last-ditch effort. I don't know how long I stayed like that. It felt like forever. Eventually, I peeked out from under the jacket. Light was seeping through the slits, daytime. I couldn't hear that thing anymore. Figured the sunlight spooked it off. I cracked the closet door open slow as hell. It was safe. Needless to say, I got the fuck out of there. I'm never going back. I don't want to see a therapist because they won't believe me. They'll think I'm bats hit crazy. Maybe I am. All I know is the locals in the Appalachians aren't lying when they talk about this shit. Whatever it was real, and I'm done. This is a story my family told me growing up. We live in a rural spot on the Navajo reservation. My aunt, Vera, and her two brothers, Calix and Torin, were home alone one night while my grandparents, Lyrian and Merwin, went off to a chapter house meeting. The three of them were in the house, and like a lot of folks on the reservation back then, we didn't have electricity. It had been dark outside for about an hour, and Vera and my uncles were getting ready for bed. Then they heard noises like someone was fucking around with stuff outside. Calix, the oldest, went to the front window and peeked out. He saw a figure by the truck. That was some weird shit because the nearest neighbor was miles away. Whatever it was, it opened the truck door and started rummaging through the personal stuff my family kept in there. Vera and my uncles freaked out. They knew they had to do something. Torin grabbed the rifle, and they steadied themselves, gripping it tight. They flung the door open and aimed at the figure. It turned and started walking toward them, not giving a single fuck about the gun. Calix pulled the trigger. Nothing. The damn thing wouldn't fire. The figure kept coming, and Vera said she caught a whiff of something like a rotting corpse. It was so strong she gagged. Calix kept yanking the trigger, but it was useless, and that thing just got closer. Then, off in the distance, headlights lit up the road. Lyrian and Merwin were coming back. The figure glanced toward the light, backed off, and slipped behind a tree near the house. Calix bolted for the truck, rifle still in hand. Merwin ran inside, grabbed Vera, and hauled her to safety while Lyrian headed straight for the stove. He scooped up a handful of ashes, smeared them over the gun, and shoved an ash-covered bullet into the chamber. He stepped out onto the porch and fired toward the tree. Whatever that fucker was, it didn't expect the gun to work. The shot rang out, echoing through the night, and the dark figure took off running. Merwin, Calix, and Torin chased after it while Lyrian jumped in the truck to follow. There weren't many roads or paths out there, so the truck bounced around, headlights swinging wild, not locking onto any one spot. Torin swears that when the lights did catch it, he saw a woman. Not just that, she was running on all fours, like a goddamn bear. Lyrian finally stopped the truck near a ditch that drops about 20 feet. He got out and started yelling in Navajo. Torin says he was shouting about a local woman, called her out by name, saying he wasn't scared, that he knew it was her, and to leave his family the fuck alone. A few days later, word got around that the woman Lyrian named had died. I've always been told that if you know who a skinwalker is and say their name, it'll kill them. That's how the story ends. Some freaky shit my family swears by.